Good morning, Skallywags, and welcome back to a series of Enigmatic events. I'm Spoo.
I'm AJ.
So yes, we've been gone for just a moment, but we're back with something, I don't even know what to call it. Interesting, I guess?
Words.
Not our
Words
typical type of thing, but definitely a mystery. And just to kind of add a little ambiance to the episode here, there's a storm rolling in, so you might hear
storms.
there's been some pretty decent thunder happening, so you might hear some of that throughout the episode.
It is real.
But let me ask you a question. Do you believe in the paranormal? Ghosts, poltergeists, the unexplained? Because let me just say that if you don't, if you are a skeptic, this may change your mind.
This is the tale of a family that lived in the 1940s that is just, it's the weirdest story I've ever heard of.
This one's bizarre.
It was a warm summer day, June 21st.
I don't know if you can hear that, but that's creepy wind.
June 21st, 1941, in Odon, Indiana. This story takes place on the Hackler family farm, and it is just the most bizarre. I don't even know what like we said, I don't know what to call it.
When writing the script for this, I just kept calling it the incident or the event.
When I was doing research, I was just like, I don't even know what, is this real? I would go through and I'd be like, this can't be real.
This is one of those stories where if it weren't for the fact that it was, I mean, we'll get to like how many people
It was very well documented.
Very well documented, witnessed by tons of people, so there's no way that this didn't happen.
But you're gonna think it didn't.
Oh. Good timing. But yes, but it definitely did. Just after breakfast, this is around about 10 in the morning, Mr. Hackler, he's headed out. This is a 2-story farmhouse. He's headed out to the barn to kind of start his morning chores. He happens to turn around and he notices that there's smoke coming from one of the upstairs bedrooms. Meanwhile, inside at the kitchen table having breakfast, one of the daughters of the family, she also smells the same smoke. So of course, like anybody would, they start investigating. They're looking around the house trying to figure out where is this smell and sight of smoke coming from. So, and of course that leads them to the bedroom. And that's where we discover the first little odd thing. There's a fire on the wall. And allow me to clarify here. I do not mean that the wall is on fire. I mean that there is a fire on the wall. More specifically, a single strip of wallpaper is on fire.
As anyone would, the Hackler family, they decided, we have a fire, we call the fire department.
Sure.
So that's what they did. They called the fire department out to investigate this fire, put this fire out for them. When the Odon Fire Department arrived, they thought that, this family has like wallpapered over like an old chimney and somehow like the bricks are crumbling or something, and it has caught this structure on fire. They pulled back the wallpaper to put out the fire, pulled back the wallpaper, and
that's where it gets weird.
Nothing. There was no chimney behind there. It was actually just a wall. Mm-hmm. But here's the strange part. There was no char marks on the wall. There was no char marks on any of the other strips of wallpaper.
So just in case that doesn't click with you, that means the wall,
fine,
not on fire. Anything behind the wall, not on fire. There's no chimney there. Just the single strip of wallpaper.
To also, let you guys know, back in the 40s, strips of wallpaper were not really long, wide strips of wallpaper like we have now. They were very narrow strips of wallpaper. So you're looking at it maybe a 12-inch strip of wallpaper, one strip in one area, burned, but
and the
nothing
wallpaper
else.
is burned, but even the spot directly behind where the wallpaper was burning, not burned, not blackened, not singed, nothing.
Which, okay, so that's our story, right?
So, what do you guys think? Leave us a So no, it gets weirder, trust me. Obviously the firemen, they're a little confused by
Right.
this, but they don't really give it much thought. They put the fire out and they, say their goodbyes to the family. They head on back into town, back to the station. But almost the second they arrive back at the station, they receive another call. Another call back to the Hackler house. This time the call has come from Mrs. Hackler. She had actually found a second fire in another bedroom. Now, when I say another bedroom, I don't mean like, here's where the wallpaper was, and then on the other side of this wall, there's another bedroom. We're talking like other side of the house.
Upstairs bedroom, but
Upstairs,
other side of the house.
yeah. So the first, if I remember, the first one was upstairs. I believe this one was downstairs.
No, this one was still
also
upstairs.
But on the total opposite side of the
But
house.
one faced the front of the house and one faced the back of the house.
Right. So opposite sides. And in this room, she actually finds a mattress with a smoldering fire inside the mattress. There's smoke pouring out of the mattress, but no flames.
So the firefighters, which I have a huge respect for firefighters, they come all the way back out to the house and they actually put out the fire that was actually inside the mattress. They check, nothing else is on fire. It was just the inside.
Everything's
Yeah, it wasn't even the whole bed. It was just inside the mattress. And they decide, okay, we're gonna leave now. We've got the second fire out, and they are heading to leave to go back to the station.
They're like packing up their gear, basically, and about to leave.
Then something happens. Another fire. I didn't know where this one was. It just said another fire.
Right.
Popped up in the house. So they go to try to put that fire out, and while they're doing that, as soon as they
Another fire.
as soon as they get the fire out, another fire in another room popped up. They go to put that one out, and before they could even put that one out, another fire. Now at this point, that's a lot of fires.
Things are starting to look a little suspicious.
Just, like, a lot of and they're in different rooms, different stories.
Total opposite sides of the house. Yeah.
Yeah. So fire, another fire, another
Yes.
fire, and another fire.
I mean, literally, for every single extinguished fire, another one would pop up somewhere else in the house. And again,
Crazy.
this would be like, upstairs bedroom, down in the living room.
Whoa.
Ooh. This is going to be a really good storm coming in, and I'm hoping we don't lose power. But anyway, if you hear thunder in the background, let it just be ambiance. So anyway, so basically we're not talking about, a piece of wallpaper catches on fire, then that wall catches on fire, that it then leads to the next room. We're not talking about, an ember from this fire drifted into the hallway and caught the hallway. We're talking upstairs bedroom, downstairs room on total opposite end of the house. Like, sometimes they're in the same room, sometimes they are complete opposite sides of the house.
And they didn't all have flames. They weren't
Right.
flaming fire. Some
Little
of them
small,
were,
yeah,
but
most of them small, contained to one, specific spot.
Yeah.
And they were popping up in places, not only that were completely random, but they would seem to have, bizarre origins behind them even. So you've got, a piece of wallpaper catches on fire. You've got a mattress that's smoldering. Even Mr. Heckler's clothes, they're hanging up on the backside of a door, just randomly burst into flames.
his beautiful Sunday best.
Yes, full-on spontaneous combustion.
Can you just imagine, they're gone.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but this is what happened.
Firefighters are there the whole time, and they are completely puzzled. They have no idea what is going on. But they're there, and they're putting out these fires all over this house. It just keeps getting worse and worse and more fires. So much so that neighbors were helping the firefighters, the Hackler family was helping the firefighters, and it got to a point in the day when this whole fire department of Odon, Indiana had to actually call in reinforcements from a fire brigade from a neighboring town. And they came out and they were there as well.
Here's where it gets insane.
All in all, at the Hackler family farm that day, there were neighbors, there was the Hacklers, and there were over 100 volunteer firefighters witnessing these small, unusual, weird,
Unexplained fires.
all over the house. 100 firefighters.
And that's why we say, that as weird as this story is, that it sounds completely made up, if not for the fact that the Hackler family, not included, the neighbors, not included, just firemen. There were over 100 firemen there throughout the course of the day.
And they were from another town as well.
Yeah.
So it's not even like a town conspiracy kind of thing. It's like...
No, this is from like multiple stations.
Yeah, I don't even know what to call this.
Right. So as far as, specific witnessed events throughout the course of the day, we mentioned the wallpaper, the bed, the clothes. So here are a couple of the other things that some of the firemen witnessed on that day. Boom. So several witnesses, including several firefighters, were down in one of the downstairs rooms. This is getting loud if you can't. I'm sure you can hear it on here. Anyway, they're in one of the downstairs room. They're dealing with another fire, and all of a sudden the curtains in the room just whoosh, just suddenly go up in a giant fireball. They actually go over, they put the curtains out, and the second, like almost to the second that they actually get that fire extinguished, the curtains on the window on the opposite side of the room, they suddenly burst into flames, and in front of this window just happen to be standing two people. So they're fighting a fire over here. Meanwhile, you've got two people over here just kind of watching, standing in front of the window on the opposite side of the room. They get this fire out, and whoosh, goes up right behind them.
Yeah, it was in their parlor. So it's like what we call the living room now. So the biggest downstairs room.
Right. While that in and of itself is weird, that's not the weird part of it. What is weird is that the fire destroyed the curtains. Completely destroyed the curtains. However, the window itself, the window framing, the rolling shades behind the curtains, untouched.
And just to be clear for some of the younger viewers, when we talk about shades, we're not talking about blinds
not like
or
Venetian
anything.
blinds.
They are like the rolling shades. So they are actually fabric that is rolled up. If you have fabric on fire right next to fabric, it usually catches on fire.
That fabric should have caught on fire. But other than the actual curtains themselves, nothing else was singed, scorched, not even blackened by it. It was just whoosh, curtains are gone. Everything else is fine. Thank you for the good cue of thunder there. That was perfectly timed.
Also in the downstairs, they had like a little study library type of a room. And one of the firefighters noticed that there was a book on a bookshelf full of other books, that had smoke just billowing
thick
out of
black smoke.
Just coming out of this one book. So he goes over and he pulls the book out of the bookshelf, and the front of the book is fine. The back of the book is fine.
Other books around it are fine.
The bookshelf's not burned or anything, but he opens up the book and all of the pages are just gone. They are ash. Every page in the book was just burned, but the cover was fine.
Think about that for a second. Have you ever actually tried to burn a book?
It's hard.
A magazine, even. It doesn't have, you actually have to, it'll burn, and then you have to, kind of move the pages out of the way to burn the next several pages. To burn an entire book is not an easy task.
I don't know how thick it was, but I don't think it matters.
Like I said, even a magazine.
One, it was on a bookshelf.
Yeah.
Closed. Full of other books.
and all the other books?
And here's the thing, even the inside cover, no scorch marks. It had ash because the pages were now ash, but it had no scorch marks. Like they wiped it down. That's just crazy to me.
Yeah.
What do we call this?
I don't. The event. The incident.
The incident.
The thing. I don't know.
Hours ticked away. This is not something that happened just in 20 minutes. Hours ticked away. Volunteer firefighters, neighbors, they were all there. And one witness actually told the newspaper it was like invisible hands were lighting matches all over the house, all day long.
So I know what you are probably thinking at this point. Either this is like some kind of a giant hoax, or the house just had like the worst wiring or electrical problems ever in the history of wiring.
That's what I thought when I first read.
Right. One small problem with that. And here's where the story gets really weird. This is the 1940s in, the middle of nowhere, Indiana. There's absolutely no possibility that it was faulty wiring.
Why?
Because, well, the house didn't have wiring. It didn't have electricity. There weren't even power lines running anywhere near the house.
It's so crazy.
And it wasn't a hoax because more than 100 people witnessed it happening.
No, more than 100 firefighters.
That doesn't include onlookers, neighbors, and the family themselves. That's just firefighters. Witnessed it with their own eyes.
Fire investigators were baffled. They tried to figure out everything. They looked at every possibility that this possibly could have caused this. There were no storms.
Goose egg.
Yeah, there were no storms, so there was no electricity, like lightning.
No lightning strikes.
Yeah.
No weird phenomenon.
Like you said, the power lines they had some power lines in town, but that is miles away from this farm. There were no atmospheric things going on that could have caused it. The firefighters are just completely puzzled as to what they are dealing with.
Yeah.
In total, on that day, there were 28 fires in the one house. It wasn't until midnight.
Yeah. It was over the course of 13 hours.
It wasn't until midnight that they actually got the last fire extinguished. 28 fires, 100 firefighters, one house, no electricity, no storms, beautiful sunny day.
Please explain.
Insert explanation here. We have none.
and kind of going back to the whole, the hoax theory, this, what if this is just another Amityville, basically, the family put this up, somehow rigged it, whatever. Not only do you have, over 100 witnesses, but if you are somebody that still believes that the family must have pulled some kind of massive, awesome hoax that would even be unbelievable by today's standard, let alone in the 1940s, there's a few extra things that you might want to know first. First of all, once all of the fires had been put out, the Hackler family gathered up, any of the bedding, basically, that they still had that hadn't been burned throughout the course of the day, dragged it out to the front yard, and basically just camped out in the front yard. As far as why they did this, it wasn't because it wasn't, it wasn't like smoke or anything like that in the house. It was because they were afraid that how are they supposed to know whether or not another fire was going to break out while they're in there sleeping and then they die in their sleep? They had no idea. So they're like, just to be on the safe side, we're camping tonight, kids.
I would have done that too. I wouldn't have stayed in the house. And they didn't just do that for the one night.
No.
They were out there
for a while. As if that wasn't extreme enough, the family was basically so freaked out. They actually thought that this was caused by angry poltergeists or some form of evil spirit, that they actually decided to take the entire house apart, brick by brick, and move it to a completely different location on their property and rebuild it one piece at a time.
Yep.
So they took the whole house down, moved it, and rebuilt it as it was, just in a different spot.
Yeah, and they slept outside that whole time. They camped outside.
Or at least, they, slept in the barn or whatever. Yeah, but yes, they didn't go back in the house.
No, they never went back to sleep in the house in that location.
Right.
So, that does away with hoax. You're not going to go through that much trouble for a hoax.
And and they might. Who knows? But the biggest important thing there is that while doing all of this, they didn't, seek attention from it or anything. They weren't, yes, people wrote stories about it because, the firemen were telling stories, people told the stories, but the family themselves, they weren't like, yes, I'm Mr. Heckler, or Hackler, I guess it is. They weren't out there bragging about it or whatever. They were freaked out. They were like, we don't know what happened, but we're going to move our house because something is obviously pissed off and we don't want to continue pissing it off. And whether it was evil spirits or not, moving the house must have worked, because once they had their house rebuilt, they moved back into the house. Nothing else ever happened after that.
Speaking of the house, the Hacklers weren't the first family to live there. They weren't the ones that built the house. The house had actually had 2 other owners.
And this gets interesting.
2 other families. The first family that actually built the house, was the first one to live there, was a family of 5. They actually all died in the house. It was a weird circumstance.
And it wasn't like murder or nothing like that.
No, but it was a weird circumstance. Basically, neighbors came over because they noticed the family wasn't out and about taking care of their animals. The neighbors came over, investigated, and found all 5 of the family members dead in the house. And they found a diary that one of them had kept that said that everybody was sick with what she called a,
quote,
burning
fever.
It took a little bit of time. The house was then sold to another guy, and he had 2 sons. They moved into the house. Now, this one's not quite house related, but it's still tragedy. He actually had his 2 sons, and they both died separately at separate times, both from hunting accidents. So then he sold the house to the Hackler family.
The Hackler family, and then of course they have their incident.
So the house has tragedy tied to it, and the first tragedy, the very first owners, 5 of them dying from that burning fever. I feel like that's a little weird.
Right.
Years later, the Indiana State Fire Marshal actually gave an interview to a local newspaper talking about his career, and he actually stated that he was there that day, and the Hackler family farm was the most bizarre, bewildering, puzzling thing that he had ever encountered, and he still to this day did not have any explanation for it. He was offered them no possibilities of what it could have been. He's just like, this was the most bizarre thing I've ever experienced in my whole career.
He was just as confused about it as we are, basically.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was the house cursed, perhaps? I mean, obviously, we're never going to know for real, but I mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, you've got a family, the first family to live there dies of the burning fever. You've got a guy that loses 2 sons, and then the third family to live there, the house spontaneously combusts around them. I mean, especially when you have the whole burning family connection thing to it.
I know, when I read that.
It's definitely weird. So, I mean, curse or just biggest, most bizarre coincidence ever. Whatever the case is, it definitely makes for a very intriguing story.
Yes, because there's no possible answer, even according to the professionals.
Right. I mean, here we are, 80 years later, and they still cannot explain what happened on this farm this day in June in the middle of the 1940s.
Yeah.
But what do you think? That's what I'm most interested in. Please let me know. Right down there in the comments below.
And as always, please feel free to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And as long as you're here, give us a like, comment below, and hit that subscribe button. We have new shows every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. All kinds of different content and something for everyone.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, yes, we were off there for a little bit. If you saw the Godzilla vs. Kong review we did, I explained what that was all about. So if you're interested in knowing why we were gone, why the format has kind of changed a little bit, go back and watch kind of the end of that video and you'll see why. So yes, everything has kind of condensed now. It's not Monday through Friday any longer, but it is back to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And yes, right now we're kind of working to get back into that groove. For right now, at least, this show on Wednesdays for sure. There will be some the other shows will be popping back up for Monday, Friday, hopefully within the next week or 2.
And you have specials coming up.
Yes.
Like once in a while, you're gonna have a special guest.
If you saw the the old show that we had here called The Show, that's it's kind of coming back, kind of.
I mean,
it's going to be like a once a
time.
month type of deal sort of thing, and every so often kind of thing. But we should be having another. He was with me on the Godzilla vs. Kong review, and we'll be having
D.
He being D, yes. And D will be back here in a couple of weeks for another little review of a certain... Well, we talk about it in that video, so just go watch that video. Yeah.
Let's face it. Go watch that video, and if you haven't watched Godzilla vs. Kong, I like to say Kong vs. Godzilla.
Well, sure.
It's a Kong
movie.
You should watch that.
You should watch that. But yes, anyway, but most importantly, guys, definitely give us a comment down below. Let us know what you think of this story. Let us know what you would like to see next in this series of enigmatic events. Thanks for watching.
Bye.